Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm Brett Davis, and joining me today is our Eastern Washington reporter, Timothy Schuman. So earlier this week, U.S. Rep. Cathy McMorris Rodgers, she delivered opening remarks at the Oversight Investigations Subcommittee hearing on the role of data brokers and online privacy protections. What can you tell us about that, Tim? What's going on?
The subcommittee hearing was basically exploratory investigation into data privacy laws in the United States, which are significantly behind places like, say, Germany, Europe, where they have like the GDPR and better rights around digital right to be forgotten, right to close your accounts with ease, right to not have your data sold and brokered by third parties. And currently in the United States, we have reasonable government protections around the usage of private data, but we have very, very few public protections around what companies or corporations can do with data that they gather on you. That data is considered their own. It's not yours. We have, for instance, things like credit reporting bureaus use this, and companies like Amazon use this. I don't know if you've ever searched for something on Facebook, and then all of a sudden you start seeing ads for that product on Amazon.
Very much so.
That is Amazon mining the cookies of your browser for what you search for on Facebook.
Wow. So it really is listening.
They are always listening. That's how they make money. And the hearing had three witnesses testifying. Justin Sherman is a senior fellow and research lead data brokerage project at Duke University. Marshall Irwin is a VP and chief security officer at Mozilla Corporation that makes the Firefox browser. He's also a fellow at the, I forget the exact title, but I believe it was a Stanford Internet Privacy Organization, where he's an associate professor. And then Professor Laura Moy, who's associate professor of law and a faculty director on the Center for Privacy and Technology at Georgetown Law. And all of them had very slightly different angles, but interesting points to bring up. Marshall Irwin, the Mozilla Corporation executive, for instance, mentioned that there are a lot of solutions that can't feasibly be made technically. Technology companies, if they're acting ethically, can do a lot to protect their users from other companies mining their users' data. And in a lot of cases, it's actually in their best interest. I don't know if anyone noticed this, but sometime in the last 2 years, Amazon stopped sending any product names with your orders to your email. And the reason that happened is because Amazon realized that Google was mining that data and using it for ad pricing. So all of your Amazon orders that come to your Gmail addresses now are merely an order number and a dollar amount. They don't break things out by items, and they don't list the individual item names.
It's like a little informational war between companies.
Purely competitive free market things right there. But it was Amazon protecting their business interest and Google protecting their business interest. And the point Mr. Irwin, the chief security officer at Mozilla, was making is that companies can do things, and often do, to protect the interests of their consumers. But the problem comes in when a consumer is tricked or through nefarious means or otherwise into giving away a bunch of their data to a third party. Then that data becomes property of that third party. So things get much murkier there. And he was advocating that without a legal framework for recourse, essentially these data brokers can profit off of mining data from American citizens.
Now, is the government looking into setting up any kind of a national data privacy standard, or is it more ad hoc than that? Or
that was the thrust of the meeting. It is a little bit more ad hoc than that. There's not currently one unified proposal. There's varying proposals, several focusing on, for instance, the TikTok ban that has recently been in the news. There's one version of a bill they spoke about specifically had to do with protecting children, protecting people under the age of 18, saying that, obviously they don't have the ability to give consent in these situations. There was a lot of talk about simplifying terms of service and not allowing companies to hide behind, essentially deals with the devil, Like, well, you clicked OK on this 40-page document you didn't read that says we own all your stuff now.
So something else. Then, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, the other interesting part, Professor Laura Moy, the Georgetown Law Center director on privacy and technology, brought up an interesting point that the IRS has recently started purchasing large amounts of location data on American citizens for purposes of tax collection, ostensibly. And she raised another point that law enforcement agencies have recently been going to private parties to purchase data relating to investigations because the laws around the data they can obtain from private parties are much more lax than laws they can obtain through a judicial order. And she described it as an end around the Fourth Amendment.
That sounds like the worst of both worlds.
Correct. Yes. Our right to unreasonable search and seizure. She's saying, well, you're not being searched. It's a third party who's willingly giving the data to the government entity, police, the sheriff, whoever.
Yeah, that could definitely have ramifications in the future. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It could, but the bulk of the meeting, this 2.5 hour long hearing, was that currently there is no legal framework or ramification for that data being sold because it's not your data anymore. Yes, it's about you. Yes, it has your cell phone location for the last 5 years in it, but it's not yours. It's a third party's.
Now, something else that's been in the news recently is AI, artificial intelligence. Was that brought up at all in this hearing?
It was brought up. McMorris Rodgers raised a point that if we're not protecting this data may be used to train artificial intelligence that doesn't align with our goals or values as individuals or as a society. And part of the discussion around the framing of the law was how do we protect that data and make sure that it is used in a manner that we agree with and we find ethical and reasonable.
So Skynet is not sentient quite yet.
Not quite yet. And I don't think we're quite at that point. Right. But if anyone's been following what's going on with large language models lately, there is a frighteningly huge leap in the last 6 months.
Oh, all right. Well, that's also something to keep an eye on. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Timothy Shuman, this is Brett Davis. Please subscribe, and thanks so much for listening.